Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
This is the 10th Moving Forward Forum, sponsored by New Pioneers for a Sustainable Future here in Springfield, Kentucky. My name is Sister Claire McGowan. I am founder and executive director of New Pioneers. And tonight we have a very exciting program. We have with us 5 of the 9 adventuresome new pioneers who went to New York City 2 weeks ago to be part of the People's Climate Rally, which turned out to be 400,000 people in the city of New York, trying to convince and urge world leaders to do something about the crisis of global climate change. So we invited those members from around here, around the area, who would be willing to come and share their experience with all of you tonight. And we'd like to begin with Joyce Minkler. Joyce is a member of the staff of New Pioneers. She is a mental health therapist. She lives in Marion County, and we're delighted, Joyce, that you're able to join us tonight.
Okay, so why did I go to the People's Climate March in New York? I think that what brought me to that march of 400,000 people a few weeks ago began in the late 60s and the early 70s when the Apollo crews started sending back to us images of the Earth. Do you remember those pictures that we began to call the blue marble? That image really has stayed with me for years. It was a kind of wrenchingly beautiful photograph of the Earth. It was blue and beautiful, just hanging out there by itself in black space. For people of my generation, it was our first real look at the reality of where we lived on this gorgeous but fragile blue planet that held life as we know it. Suddenly it was clear that we weren't a bunch of individual countries separated by oceans and cultures and languages, each trying to conduct our own business and take care of our own interests. We were really a completely interdependent organism, beautiful and fragile, just hanging out there in space. All of us totally dependent on one another. Our lives completely affected by whatever happened on this small blue marble, whether we were aware of what was happening or not. The same earth, air, water, and sun kept us all alive. That photo, I think, changed forever my sense of myself as an isolated individual. I knew from then on that what touched one of us touched all of us, that our lives were totally interconnected, whether we liked it or not. And now for years, scientists have been warning us about the long-term effects of continued fossil fuel use, which produces rising carbon dioxide emissions. We've heard that if we continue on our current path of allowing emissions to rise year after year, climate change will change everything about our world. Major cities will be underwater, agriculture will be disrupted, and food shortages will occur. More migration will happen as people search for work, and as people search for work and for livable land. And we know that probably global conflict will intensify. And we don't have to do anything to bring about this kind of future. All we have to do is do nothing, and to keep on denying how much this frightens all of us. I've made my living as a psychotherapist, and over the years I've learned how dysfunctional we all get when we don't look straight at the things that frighten us and try to do something about them. So in an effort myself to be less frightened, I started to study these issues in order to understand them better. And I joined New Pioneers in order to be inspired by others who were taking positive steps to make personal and community changes. And when the People's Climate March in New York was announced, I knew I wanted to be there, to be another visible presence that could show world leaders gathered at the United Nations that this issue is critical to all the world's people, and that we care, and that we hold those leaders accountable for the major global changes that need to be made if we are to all live peacefully on this beautiful earth into the future. I think I've come to see that as scary as the climate change issue is, it could be the key issue that helps us to transform old, outmoded economic and political systems into new, life-giving ways of organizing ourselves, nationally and internationally. If we as individuals and as individual nations would take the risk to see ourselves in a new way, we could make big changes. This summer I visited the Bavarian region of Germany, and I was amazed to see solar panels on almost every house, every barn, every public building. There were fields of solar panels which generated power for whole towns, and fields of windmills that were doing the same thing. In Germany, renewable energy sources consistently meet 27% of the country's electrical demand. But last week, it was announced for a few days, 75% of all that country's needs for power were met in this way. Germany aims to be completely powered by renewable sources by 2050. And it leads the world in this commitment and in this action. It can be done if individuals and communities make changes and pressure their governments also to make changes. At the Climate March, we were 400,000 people. We were 80 blocks long. Well-behaved, creative people of all ages, colors, languages, and religions, coming from all over the country and from all over the world, to stand together in the belief and in the commitment that the world can change in a positive way for good and for the good of all its inhabitants. There were many, many young people actively involved, concerned about the world they were inheriting. It was a colorful, creative, inspiring collection of people who were joyful and who were also completely serious about these issues, promising to continue their involvement in a variety of ways, to change their own ways of using the world's resources, and to help us all to imagine a new way to live on this planet as family members, deeply connected to each other and to everything else that makes up our beautiful earth. That's why I went.
Thank you. Thank you, Joyce. That was wonderful. Next we have Sister Terry Wassinger. Terry is a Dominican Sister of Peace. She hails from the state of Kansas. She founded and was director of Heartland Farm Center for Wholesome Living. Terry is also a nurse midwife who has delivered a great number of babies into the world. And now she's living at St. Catherine Mother House here in Springfield. Thank you for being with us tonight, Terry.
Thank you. Why did I go to New York on September 21st? Actually, I went a few days ahead of time. And the first thing I did when I got out at Grand Central Station was to cross the street to 215 Madison Avenue, go up to the 12th floor, where there is an office of climatechange.org, where 400 volunteers have been working for 1 year to bring this out. I was so pleased to be there and to congratulate them and to tell them they did a good job. And this was 2 days before the march, when they hoped we would get 100,000 people there. So I was so pleased to go, but the reason I went was very similar to what Joyce has shared, but maybe a little bit more technical. I had been following the United Nations climate conferences since 1995 when they started. 2015 will be the 20 years that every year there has been a conference held about climate change and what can we do about it. And I would have been very frustrated that I never saw much change. But I became very excited when the Secretary General of the United Nations, Ban Ki-moon, asked people to come together. And mostly what he's requesting, it's true, 2 days later there was a conference at Yunnan, but in December of this year will be the 2014 conference of the United Nations. And he's not too concerned about that one, but he asked heads of states to really start thinking seriously about doing something about climate change. Because over the years, it has been dismal, really dismal. I don't know how many of you remember that in 1997, when they met in Kyoto, Japan, the United Nations meeting, they drew up a protocol, the Kyoto Protocol, that nations would start to bring down emissions so that the climate temperature wouldn't keep rising. And all they asked for was that from 2008 to 2012, nations would reduce their emissions by 6 to 8%. Well, President Clinton signed that in 1998. Congress did not ratify it. And in 2001, President Bush explicitly rejected the Kyoto Protocol. I was really, really upset about that. I come from Kansas, where the Koch brothers come from. And I know it was the oil companies that kept this down, that they didn't want emissions to be cut. They didn't want oil to be regulated. They didn't want clean coal. They didn't want anything that would hinder their bank account. And so I became very, very involved. We had the showing of Al Gore's book, An Inconvenient Truth, in 2006, and we started a grassroots environmental action team, which we call GREAT. GREAT, yeah. And so the Grassroots Environmental Action Team in Kansas. And we worked very hard to try to bring people aware of what we could do, because in the 1997s, you might remember that there was a hole in the ozone cover of the Earth. Do you all remember that? Mm-hmm. And they determined that what caused that was refrigerants, the freons, what they call atomic halogens. And we actually did away with those. And the hole this year is actually closing. So, you know, it made me know that something can be done when people work together. So I was really excited to be in New York. And I'm very excited about President Obama really wanting to go into something next year in Paris, 2015. That's what the Secretary General Ban Ki-moon is asking, that when heads of states come to Paris, December of 2015, they bring together something that will be legally binding for every country. The Kyoto Protocol was upgraded to be that countries would reduce their emissions 15% by 2020. And Germany certainly, as you said, has really been ahead of that. Our country has always been an observer. After President Bush rejected the Kyoto Protocol, we no longer were a voting member at these UN conferences. The United States stopped being a full member, because to be a member, you'd have to commit to cutting emissions. Mm-hmm. But I think President Obama really has a plan for this. I'm very hopeful for the future. That's what I take away from it. I take away great hope.
Thank you, Terry, very much. Our next panelist is Alida Coughlin. Alida is a graphic artist. She lives in Nelson County. And one of her particular claims to fame for us is that Alida is the designer of the New Pioneers logo, which everybody loves. And in the middle of the 400,000 people, Joyce Minkler looked up, and the New Pioneers logo was dancing around in the crowds in the middle of this huge gathering of people. So, Alida, we thank you for giving us such a wonderful logo, and we look forward to hearing your comments about your experience.
I was going to bring that sign that I had, and I forgot it at home. But anyway, I am a latecomer into real activism for the climate. I slid into it sideways, maybe, by just being more aware of our oneness as people and our oneness with the earth, and wanting to develop that kind of consciousness that Brian Swimme talks about, that everything is conscious. And Mother Earth is conscious, the animals, the seas, every living creature participates in consciousness. And I got the idea that, well, I guess God is consciousness itself, because he's life-giving and we all participate in life. So it was kind of in a spiritual sense that I realized the sacredness of everything. And then because I've always kind of operated out of my head, I wanted to develop a more intuitive awareness. So by and by, I just came into the knowledge of our fragility as a planet, and how we as a people are responsible. And in spite of all the deniers, even in my own family, so what I want to do now is equip myself a little bit better to explain the fragility and how we can all work as a people to help. I want to read a poem by Meister Eckhart, who was a Dominican theologian back in the 13th century, and he was a mystic. And here's what he said: "When I was the forest, when I was the stream, when I was the forest, when I was still the field, when I was every hoof, foot, fin, and wing, when I was the sky itself, no one ever asked me, did I have a purpose?" Poetry does this to me. No one ever wondered, was there anything I might need? For there was nothing I could not love. It was when I left all we once were that the agony began, the fear and questions came. And I wept, and tears I had never known before. So I returned to the river. I returned to the mountains. I asked for their hand in marriage again. I begged to wed every object and creature. And when they accepted, God was ever present in my arms. And he did not say, "Where have you been?" For then I knew my soul, every soul, has always held him. So, anyway, why did I want to go? I wanted to just give myself, because I know that the oil companies, those who exploit all our riches, the riches of the planet, are driven by a kind of selfishness, and I know my own selfishness, and I wanted to give myself somehow. And it just seems that we are so powerless, because we're the little people, the 99%, against this humongous industrial military complex that seems to be winning. And I thought, well, bodies count, so I'm going to put mine out there and see how big we can make this. And I was not disappointed. I come from Canada originally, and I met on the subway a large group of Canadians who were had great big signs about the tar sands in Alberta, you know, and which is XL pipeline kind of thing. So we got to talking, and it was just so wonderful to see little children being pushed by their parents down in the march. It just gave a sense of solidarity that I had not realized was there. And I remember in Washington, D.C., when I was protesting the Iraq War, there would be people on the sidelines to say, well, we want the war, you know, and they were heckling us. But this time, people were cheering us, and they had signs themselves. And it was like, this is really going to go somewhere. And so what I'm taking away from this march, it was I had a kind of euphoria to just have this oneness. And so I'm going to keep on doing things like this if it doesn't seem like much, but we're going to do that XL pipeline protest, you know, where we hope to get arrested or whatever, to draw attention to the cause. So, and I'd like to ask a question. I don't know the answer to this, but it bothers me a lot. What happens every time a bomb drops in Syria or anywhere, or when we fire all these guns? There's something happening in our atmosphere. There has to be. I don't know what it is. I'm going to find out. Anyway, cheers.
Thank you, Alita, very, very much. And our next panelist is Sister Mai-Yung Nguyen. She is also a Dominican Sister of Peace. Mai-Yung was born in Vietnam, and she's been a Dominican Sister of Peace now for 15 years. And just in the last few months, Mai-Yung achieved her PhD in mechanical engineering at the University of Louisville, and her specialty is health science research. So welcome, Mai-Yung. We're very glad you're with us.
Thank you very much, Sister Claire. When Sister Claire asked me, can I become a panel? I'm happy to be that too. But I also helped me to reflect of why I am in the climate change. I look back in my life. Before I become a sister, I used to say that social justice, environment, technologies, all of that is not involved to me. I'm not interested because I don't think any connection. I feel that my life later on will be the sisters And the life of the sister is the only to pray and to teach or to work in the healthcare or to work with the poor. But the moment I come to this community, Dominican Sister of Peace, I realized that human beings cannot be separate from other life, especially we are interconnected with each other, and the human being cannot be able to sustain or exist if we don't have others. So I became more aware of that, and I became more aware when I worked in the lab, the research lab, that a lot of things we did just for human being only. And people didn't pay much attention how waste they put into environment every day. Just focus on the human being benefit. It hurt me. So I keep questioning myself, how can I do to help? And it had to come when the climate walk came to me when I was in Connecticut for vacation. And that time Sister Terry tell me that should I invite me to go. And I say, well, I don't think I can go. First of all, I have another commitment in Kentucky. I have to go home before that. The second, I already booked the ticket to go home to Kentucky before the climate change happened. So if I stay for the climate walk, I need to change the ticket. And also I were around the country for 2 months, haven't been back to Kentucky. So I missed home, I missed my own bed, you know. I really want to go back to my own bed to sleep. So I say maybe not, maybe next time. But the voice inside me telling me, why, if you want to involve, this is the good time to do. And the voice keep telling me, well, one person may not make a difference. One person among million people, half of million people, doesn't make any difference. However, if every individual of 500,000 people keep thinking the way I think, there won't be 500,000 people. So the voice keep coming to me, and I made the decision, well, I have to change the ticket. So I changed the ticket and stay in Connecticut for another week. And I asked Sister Terry to bring my jacket, because I don't have my cold weather jacket and the walking shoe, because I go to the summer. I have the vacation on summer. But I'm very happy. I was very happy to come and join. It was very wonderful experience for me. I was so impressed by the way the people participate. I saw the children even few months old with the home parent, 4, 5, some parents have 2 or 3 kids together with the baby. And I also saw one man to only have 1 leg and 1 broken leg. I was so impressed. How can that person be able to walk 80 blocks? And on the right side, left side, I saw some wheelchairs with the people volunteer pushing the wheelchair for the elderly people come. And one touched me so much is the woman who have the oxygen tank next to her, and with the poster on in front of her lap. And I said, how these women can be able to participate if she already have physical limitation like this? And the man with the broken leg, and the baby still hold the bottle of milk. And I say to myself, yes, this is the good time. This is the union. That is the spirit of the United States and the whole world. And that is what it is. And I came back and I keep saying to me, it's not too late, or too young, or too old, or too busy to be involved. And everything, if we need something changed, we need everyone. And that is the hope I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mayun. Thank you. And our final panelist is Amanda Manning. Amanda is originally from Indiana and then lived for a good deal of time in Manhattan. She owned her own production company, and a few years ago she married Morris Manning and moved herself from Manhattan to Long Run Road in the East Texas section of Washington County, and has been a wonderful member of the New Pioneers Board and a volunteer at New Pioneers, and is doing some very significant work on conflict resolution. So thank you for being here, Amanda.
You're welcome. That was an excellent introduction. But you took away some of my material. So why did I participate in the Climate March was how I wanted to spend the 5 minutes. Why did I go at all? And it starts really with my living in New York City. That's when I found out it was in New York City, I realized that's the beginning of my story of participating. Because I lived there for almost 16 years, and as Sister Claire mentioned, I moved to Washington County in 2011. And that was a very, very important time in my life because what I knew in Manhattan for most of my adult life was very different here in Washington County. It's taken me a little bit of time to meet people and to kind of learn the ropes. But I've learned more about the world around me living here in Washington County than I ever did in New York City. And I met Sister Claire in 2011, the summer that I moved at the farmer's market. And it wasn't long before I was volunteering, and now I'm actually on the board of New Pioneers. In Washington County, I know farmers, some of whom are here tonight, and some city officials, and retired politicians, and some lawyers and artists. All kinds of folks that I've met here. And what I've learned is I see how people fit into a landscape. And before, having lived in New York City for so long, it was just how the landscape accommodates the people. So that was a pretty big realization for me. My husband, you mentioned as well, Morris, he not too long ago gave a lecture, and in that lecture he remarked that Long Run Creek, which she also mentioned, she knew what I was going to say without even knowing. Long Run Creek, I live on Long Run Road, we live on Long Run Road, and Long Run Creek empties into Beach Fork Creek, which it empties and travels to the Rolling Fork River, I think. Is it creek, Martha? River? I thought so, okay. So the Rolling Fork River, and that empties into the Salt River. And the Salt River empties into the Ohio River. And the Ohio River empties into the Great Lady, the mighty Mississippi. So from his lecture, I learned, and it was a good example from what I've learned the 3 years that I've lived in Washington County, of how connected we all are. So I'm a lot of the reasons why I decided to go on the march were very similar to everyone that's on the panel. That we're all connected, and this was a way to acknowledge that connection. I've actually never in my life been an activist. I don't think I've ever participated. When I say I don't think I ever have, if I did, I can't recall ever being involved in some sort of march or demonstration or protest. So this was the first time. And Washington County, what I've learned since I've lived here, implored me and made it almost a necessity to return to this place that I had lived for so many years and be a part of what I've learned so far away from it. So it was, for me, pretty transformative to return to those streets. When we were walking in, Sister Terry asked me, how did it go, and you know, what were my experiences in New York? I said, oh, I used to live there. She said, oh, okay. And it was actually kind of strange because I'd spent so much time in that city. And I feel like I brought Washington County and New Pioneers with me to this place that for me was a commercial, and I had many, many friends, but a lot of what I did there was for work. So I brought a different level of my commitment to the world around me by deciding to be present. I never asked any of my friends, I never asked any of my colleagues to go with me. They knew why I was there. A lot of people said, oh, that's so cool. In New York, I think when things like that happen, it's really common to sort of take a step back of, oh my gosh, there's so many people, all the cops are going to be out, and you go in the opposite direction of those sorts of things. And when I was walking and looking at the people around that we saw, I realized how many New Yorkers were part of the action as well, but a lot of the people were from out of town. That made me very happy to sort of bridge my now out-of-townness with my very deep connection to that city. And I wanted to say I don't want to take any sort of pious credit for being involved in the march, because that's not, I didn't feel personally better for marching in reference to those that didn't march. I just knew that the things that I've learned since I've come to Kentucky, it's a place I love so much now. So I had to go. Mm-hmm. The last remarks I'll make are what it was like to be at the march. It was pretty amazing for many, many reasons, but mostly because everyone's mentioned all the different kinds of people that were there. But it didn't feel political, and it didn't feel counterculture, and it didn't feel like there was any sort of protest. It felt unifying, and it felt glorious to sort of, think of our big blue marble and all of us very organized, and it was very very organized. It was just incredibly well put on, and there wasn't a lot of I don't know. It seemed almost civilized. So, on that note, those are the remarks I have to offer. I'm very, very glad that I went. And I'm very glad that we all got a chance to be a part of something and thereby give it back to the community as well.
Thank you very much, Amanda. I'm not usually without words, but I'm so deeply moved by what each one of you has shared, that the power and the depth of soulness is the way that I would say it, S-O-U-L, that there's something so powerful in us human beings that when it's uncovered is just incredibly beautiful and incredibly strong. And as you said, Alita, divine. It's the part of the divine that lives in each one of us. And I think that's what we experience as we hear each of you tonight. I want to add that there were 4 more members of New Pioneers who were also in New York. And they were James Spraggins, New Pioneers president, Susan Clausen from Loretto, Kathleen Lyons from Louisville, and Christy Brown from Louisville. So they couldn't be here tonight, but we're really grateful to each of you.